is the 17th day of the challenge, and I thought we should do a very restorative practice, not only to have on hand in your 30 yoga practice library, but just to know in general for a practice when you kind of need to down-regulate your nervous system, or you need to feel grounded. You need a practice where less is more. It's a way to find comfort sometimes when you're feeling either low energy or sad or defeated, or like you need a reset. So that's what I'm offering today. And I'm calling it the 5 by 6. So the 5 is 5 minutes, the 6 is 6 poses. I've picked my top 6 restorative yoga poses for this practice. And so I thought they would serve you well as you hopefully keep this practice on hand and use it as needed in your life. When you need kind of a boost, or like I said, to feel grounded, more connected with yourself or with others when you're processing something. It's just a nurturing, kind practice to have on hand. And so restorative yoga requires a lot of propping. So I'm going to suggest that you put a blanket down on your mat, just a thin one, and that you have 3 or 4 blankets total. If you own a bolster, we are going to do a pose that it's helpful for, especially if you're a little bit tighter in that pose. It's not necessary though, and you can improvise a bolster with a blanket rolled or 2 blankets rolled together. And then as you see, I have a couple blocks and a strap. And I've gone ahead and set this up. It's actually gonna work for the first 2 poses. So you can kind of create a similar setup. If you don't have the bolster, then you're gonna wanna roll some blankets together and just kind of fabricate or improvise a bolster so that's kind of appearing long and thick and round. And then additional height, which is where your head will go. I hope you can see, but the blocks are kind of staggered. So I have this one here in the middle on medium height, and the one up here on tall height, but you can do a lower setting. So you could do this block on low and this one on medium if you want to drop that down. You might not even need the angle of this setup, so you're going to want to just kind of go in and see about it and adjust as needed. You might work just fine with a bolster that's running flat on the floor. So the first pose we're going to do is child's pose. So take some time setting up, and when you're ready, you can kind of spread your knees around the end of the bolster. And we'll just call it the bolster, even though you might have set up something different. And then rest your head and adjust as needed. So we'll do some time on this side, and then we'll do some time with your other cheek resting. And your hands really just kind of go wherever you feel passive. So they could be stretched forward, they might be kind of back behind you. You might have wider elbows so your shoulders can drop. A lot of yoga classes begin with this pose because it's very grounding and soothing to the nervous system. And with the incline here that we've set up, it shouldn't be as strenuous. If it is, you might want to adjust something so that you can really feel passive. There's nothing really to strive for in this practice. Being a witness or being very observant of yourself is really what the practice holds space for. And as you do restorative yoga, you'll notice that when we give ourselves ample support and ample time, the postures really take on a life of their own that you don't otherwise see in a more active practice. You might start to sense elongation occurring without any sort of willfulness on your part. You might notice a depth of your poses that you don't find in shorter, less supported posture holds. Go ahead and switch to your opposite cheek. I'm going to keep my cheek here so I can talk to you, but switch to your opposite cheek so that we have equal time on each side. Wherever you feel some resistance, just send some loving breath to that area. Let your breath be your guide here. If you stay with the breath, you can trust that you're staying present. The mind will wander, of course, but just gently shepherd your attention back to the breath. And I will gently be leaving the child's pose and transitioning to reclining hero pose, the second of the 6. And we can use the same setup. So that's kind of why I put them next to each other, these two poses. So as a reminder, hero pose, you want to make sure your sitting bones are touching down, whether it's on the floor or something that you've propped underneath your sitting bones. You want to adjust the flesh of your legs so that you get the kneecaps to be aligned and 4 corners of the kneecaps looking straight ahead. Your toes are pointing back and your heels rest right outside the hips. And you might decide that your knees need a little more support. I welcome you to add a blanket so that your legs fold the blanket. You're kind of a blanket sandwich. You would run the blanket from the backs of the knees all the way back. And this can relieve any knee pressure here that might be unwanted. And then you're going to just gently, slowly come back. And again, like anything, you may need to adjust the height. I know what I need, so I have reclined back to kind of my perfect amount of support, but yours might be less, it might be more. And so part of the reason we have the 5-minute posture holds is allowing time to set up the pose. So it's really holding you rather than you holding the pose. Starting with your hands closer to your feet as the body kind of is initiated here. It's a big pose. And then after some time, you might play with the arms, exploring space above the head, maybe starting with your hands connected. Sometimes I grab my elbows, sometimes I extend my arms. But really the idea is to be restful and pretty passive. I don't know if you can hear it, but in the background I have soft music playing. And if you're able to hear me and hear the music, I hope it's supporting you. If you can't hear the music, just know that you can always play some soothing music in the background. And I do have a playlist. If you would ever want me to share that with you, I can. So creating an environment that's conducive to this practice includes making sure it's warm enough, making sure that you'll be uninterrupted, that it's quiet. Also considering light, making sure you don't have harsh lighting, especially in these reclining poses where you're staring up at the ceiling. And also time of day. This practice might really serve you well towards the end of your day. It might also serve you very well to begin your day with this practice. About another minute here. Start to move your hands back toward your feet if they were overhead. And pressing down on the feet, lifting the breastbone, bring yourself up, keeping your chest really forward, keeping your back body supporting your front body. And then begin to turn around. We're going to come into a head supported downward dog. And again, you can use the same setup. I apologize for the phone ringing. And you have this height variation to work with. So it's actually really nice for head supported dog because you probably don't know how much height you need under the head. So this incline is a nice way to work because you can kind of move up or down the incline as needed. Just take the crown of the head to the bolster. And if downward dog is not a pose you can sustain for an amount of time, you can use a variation of downward dog where you're standing upright and resting on a chair seat with your head. So just know that's an option because the goal is to keep the pose and the nervous system quiet. And if a 4 or 5 minute posture hold here isn't in the cards for you, you want to set yourself up for success. Because this is a long hold for downward dog, you may decide to come down here and take a short child's pose and then return. There's a saying that a pose begins as soon as you want to leave it. So if you're there wanting to leave the pose, explore what staying is like. Of course, honoring if you need to come down. But sometimes we short circuit when the need is not so much as the want. So just discerning if you need to come down, but otherwise staying beyond that impulse to leave the pose. 1 more minute to go. Go ahead and bring your knees down, sitting back in child's pose just for a couple breaths. We're going to come into reclining bound angle pose as the fourth of the 6 poses. And we can work with a bolster again, or a rolled blanket, or 2 rolled blankets. It really depends on how much height you need, but we want to take away the incline. You'll probably need additional height for your head. So you can prepare by putting an extra amount of height where your head will go. And then we're going to use a strap to keep our legs close. And we'll use some blanket or block support under the knees so that the legs can really feel cradled. And so sometimes it's less support for the knees and more right by the outer hips. So you can just kind of decide where the propping fits best to keep your legs feeling cradled. To put the strap on, you just drop it to your lower back. Try to take any twists out of it that you can. And then you'll connect the strap, feeding the tail through the rings, going back over and under that ring, the second ring, and then tightening the strap so there's no excess slack. And just kind of snug it in so that the heels come in as close as they're going to. It's easier to be pulling the strap toward you to tighten. If you're finding you're pulling away to tighten, all you need to do is move those rings to the opposite side of your body, and the strap will be pulling toward you to tighten. And come back onto your back. And then unfold the arms. So your palms are resting face up. The shoulders are sinking down, the chest is lifted. And then lift your butt and just kind of drag the buttocks away from the end of the bolster. So I hope you can see this, but my bolster starts really where my rib cage begins, and it's not any lower. So we don't really need to have height any lower than the rib cage. Your head is supported enough that your chin tilts down toward your chest. So that might mean additional blankets or folding your blanket additionally. And the propping to the knees or thighs is enough, it's adequate so that your inner thighs and your outer hips are surrendered. They're passive, they're not gripping. One of my very favorite poses. We're open, completely open, but so supported. As you hold the pose, run a body scan, just kind of seeking out the little searchlight. Any areas that feel interesting. In a good way, maybe in a not so good way. Just kind of check it all out. Parts of you that are meeting the floor. Think about these parts dropping down, tiny little roots, so that you start to feel like you're connecting with the floor. You're not separate. You don't end where the floor begins. And this little image of roots really signals the body with an attitude that it's anchored enough, it's supported enough to bloom, to really blossom open in the front body. Of course, things don't bloom before they have roots. Just let your attention be in setting down the weight of yourself feeling held. Now gently fold your hands in. Help yourself loosen the strap or help one of your feet come out of the strap. And then once you're free, bring yourself to one side. Bring yourself up. And we're going to come into our fifth pose, cross bolsters. It's actually a modified version of the bridge pose. I find it's really lovely. So I would recommend 3 blankets. And since we don't all have bolsters, we're going to use blankets so that we're all on the same page. 1 blanket is going to be for your head and shoulders. You can make it about this big. Put it toward the head side of the mat. And then the other 2 blankets you will roll to kind of imitate the shape of a bolster. And we're going to make an X shape on the mat. So the bottom of the X is horizontal. And the top of the X, that second blanket roll, will run vertically with your spine. Okay, and then you're going to kind of sit on top of it so that your hip points right here are going to be at the peak. And your head and shoulders are all in the blanket. Your feet, your heels are stepping a little bit wider than your hips, but you are going to try to put your toes above your heels. So there's a little bit of activity that's required here to keep you from distorting the shape or kind of going into a bad posture. So we want to keep the toes above the heels. The arms unfold. You'll be able to feel if this back bend is enough for you. If it's not enough, you'll just need to make your bolsters that you've built with your blankets thicker. If it's too much, you can somehow reduce the height. Your chin and chest are starting to form a relationship. Every time you inhale, just imagine the chest just expanding and lifting. And every time you exhale, snuggle your chin into that little divot between your collarbones. Your eyes are closed and your gaze is pointed away from your brain. The tailbone is gently curling up toward the ceiling. And you can support that action by just kind of pressing the heels a bit more deeply into the floor. Watch out for any hardness that tries to enter the face, especially between the eyebrows and around your eyes and around your temples. And just another minute here in the cross bolsters. Very righteous pose, a very a good remedy for kind of the depressive feelings, a low mood, low energy, low confidence. Our posture really does affect our mood, and when we're feeling less than optimal, we tend to slouch, we tend to collapse the chest. We can kind of trick ourselves into feeling better this way. Good. So step the feet to the floor. I don't know about you, but when I'm in restorative class, I feel like maybe not down dog, but I feel like the postures go really fast. You're going to slide towards your head side, just bring your hips down. And then roll to your side. We're coming to our last and final pose. And we're going to do legs up the wall pose. So if you have a wall you can use, great. I'm actually going to do a freestanding version just so you can see what that looks like, and also so you can see me better. So you can set yourself up either at a wall or on your mat and center the mat without the wall. And you're going to give yourself some support underneath your sacrum. So if you're at a wall, it could be a bolster, it could be a thin blanket, it could be a block. If you're freestanding, same options. But if you're at the wall, you kind of have to ease yourself into, you can pretend a wall is here and kind of swing the legs up as you come down so that you can get your butt close to the wall. So it's a little bit of a maneuver, which is part of the reason I wanted to show you the version on the mat, because you don't have to worry about that maneuver. So we're going to have the sacrum resting on that height and the legs extend. And you just kind of find your way in space with the legs so that you're as passive as you can be holding the legs up. Of course, it requires some effort, less if you have the wall for support. But if you're freestanding like I am, just kind of find your way to least effort, where you really feel like the weight of the legs is connected to the kind of the femur heads coming into the hip sockets, the hips coming into the bolster. You don't have to work so hard. And again, unfold the arms and close the eyes. Look away from the brain. So this is one of my very favorite poses as well. These all are, that's why I chose them. But Viparita Karani, the translation is reverse process, is one of the most robust and effective poses there is. It serves all of the systems in the body with benefit. It helps our mood. Again, if you're feeling a little bit stuck, or like your mind is stuck on a thought, you're ruminating, or you can't kind of get a new perspective, your attitude is kind of stuck in a certain setting. This is a great pose for emotional stuff. It's a great pose for physical stuff, helping the heart, the brain, the lymphatic system. It's also really good for sore, tired legs, which we all have because most of us stand at least some of the day, if not all of the day. It's an easy one to do in your bed. If you're just lying in bed, throw your legs up the wall. So I'm going to suggest that if you are using a wall, you just stay for the last couple minutes and treat this pose as Shavasana, which is a perfect Shavasana pose. It's not obviously the pose of Shavasana, but it works to come into that integrative state that we seek in Shavasana. Otherwise, if you are here freestanding, just step your feet down. Take the feet wide, let your knees angle in together. You can spend the last 30 seconds of that pose here. And then we'll all spend the last minute either, if you're still in legs up the wall, you'll stay there. You can set yourself up in Shavasana if you prefer. And if you're here with me in the supported bridge pose, just lift your hips enough that you can roll whatever you have supporting you so that it comes under the knees. And let your knees kind of fall out wide. Let yourself kind of settle into your Shavasana position. And just take a few final moments. following the breath with your attention, sensing the body. Welcoming whatever is, the isness of your life, good, bad, or otherwise. We're going to close there. And feel free to start to move. Excuse me. It's my exiting Shavasana pranayama, a sneeze. So we're going to come to seated, just to take a moment, just to sit quietly, sit up nice and tall. Without any agenda, just checking in, noticing if the practice has had any effect. Hopefully it has. And if not, that's fine too. Let's bring our hands together in front of the heart. Take a breath in through the nose and let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, honor that place within you. Namaste.